We're going live. Hold on. Double checking. If we are live, then welcome anyone who's live. Hold on. Oh, I think yes, we are live. Oh, right. Live in here with Jeremy Saltan, Knesset insider, political strategist, consultant, associate to Minister of Defense Naftali Bennett. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Avi. It's great to be with you.
Yes, here we are in the age of Corona, using probably the one company that is succeeding more than any other business in the world today due to Corona, here on Zoom. So we'll deal with Zoom as we deal with dealing with being at home. See, you get the whole home feel by your home office there.
Yes.
But let's go into it. Israeli politics, if you never thought it could be crazier, it just gets crazier day by day. Here we're dealing with a world pandemic. People are dying. You'd think Israeli politicians would be running to set up a government. And yet that's not happening. It looks more than ever that we're not going to have a government, even when Benny Gantz has the right to set up a government. It looks like he's blaming everything on Bibi Netanyahu, even though he's the one who can make a government. What is going on, Jeremy Saltan, Knesset insider, political strategist, consultant? And did we just go? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, I just lost you. So there you go. I'm asking you what is going on, Jeremy?
So I'm saying that we, as all of our viewers know, we just had our third election. And I guess you can say, thank God we had it before the coronavirus really did spread. Where we are right now is that the first mandate was given to Benny Gantz. He got 61 recommendations. Netanyahu got 58. And there was one MK, Orly Levy, who abstained. Now, one would expect that the same 61 MKs who nominated Gantz would be able to go ahead and form the same government. However, that's not happening because they're not a single bloc. Unlike Netanyahu's bloc of 58, which is a very coherent bloc, it's very much understood between the different members of the bloc who's going to get what. They speak in one voice. They also negotiate in one voice. On the other side, you have a very big mess. You have on one side Avigdor Lieberman's Yisrael Beitenu party. Lieberman is a nationalist within his political views, but he's very much against Netanyahu personally. And on the other side of that block of 61 recommendations is the joint list, including the Balad party, which, of course, has former members who've been put in jail, others that are still wanted. We know that the founder of Balad, Azmi Bashara, is still wanted for spying for Hezbollah during the Second Lebanese War. He's in exile, going between different Arab countries that are willing to harbor him. Of course, we have Hanin Zoabi, another member of that list, which is known as a member who joined the flotilla back in 2010. There's, of course, Said Nafa, who met with Assad. There's, of course, Ratas, who's now sitting a jail sentence for smuggling cell phones to other terrorists in jail. So again, you have Avigdor Lieberman on one side and the joint Arab list, including Balad, along with them. So it's very hard for them to agree on anything. The one thing they do agree on is that they want to get rid of Speaker Yuli Edelstein. That is an issue, though, right now, because what Yuli Edelstein has done is he's prevented the vote from taking place that would go ahead and replace him. But before I go ahead and buckle down on that issue, since that's going to be a very big issue of this day, we're waiting at 4 o'clock. The Supreme Court is going to rule. In terms of that, there's these allegations being thrown around that the Knesset is closed, that Edelstein had shut it down. The Knesset is very much open. You can see right now there are MKs that are in the Knesset building. The offices are open except for those that are currently being how do you say bidud?
Quarantine.
They're quarantined right now. There's 5 MKs of the coalition, 2 MKs of the opposition that are currently in quarantine, so they cannot show up. Their offices have been also marked with tape so that their parliamentary staff do not go in and also potentially get infected. Of course, we're not saying that these members of Knesset and ministers have the coronavirus. It's just because they've been in contact with people that are confirmed cases, they're right now isolated. But other than those people's rooms, the Knesset is open. The MKs are there. They're able to do their work outside of the Knesset plenum and committee meetings, which is the issue that we have at hand. For most people who don't know this, I know that you know this, Avi, but most people do not know this. The Knesset works only 3 days a week in terms of its plenum sessions, which are Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. As I have said many times on many shows, only in the Knesset can you, on Wednesday afternoon, say Shabbat Shalom. And that is, in fact, what Yuli Edelstein did last week when he decided to go ahead and put his hammer down and close the session on Wednesday. By doing so, like every other week, the Knesset is open. The plenum session does not reconvene until Monday, and that is tomorrow. We're talking today. It is Sunday. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of members of the opposition go on TV, go on social media. We've seen them go ahead and spread things that the Knesset is closed. Once again, it's important to mention that it is open. They're talking about undemocratic measures. It is, of course, within the speaker's power to go ahead and to close the session. This is all written within law. Now, we have this very weird situation where after this third election, during this time where Gantz has a mandate to form a government, but is unable to do so because there's no consensus within those who recommended him to form this government, you have what is really the only real functioning part of our government, other than the caretaker government that we have right now, which is the Knesset. And it is very important with the new Knesset members to be able to have their voices heard. In fact, after it was sworn in a week ago on Monday, there was an opportunity on Tuesday for each MK to go ahead and to give their speeches. And I understand that there was, even from the speeches given by the MKs, a lot of uncertainty and unclarity in terms of what the law actually says. This was even before Edelstein on Wednesday closed the Knesset for further notice. Before Monday, when the new Knesset was inaugurated, we were in a situation where, because of these coronavirus issues, there was a decision made by the professional staff of the Knesset for health concerns to inaugurate MKs on just 3 MKs at a time in order to go ahead and prevent the potential situation of a number of MKs getting it at the same time. And while this was being done, there were letters that were sent from the 4 lists of the opposition requesting a vote for speaker. Now, according to the law, you only need to go ahead and bring up a vote if you have 61 signatures. That was not done on Monday, and that was not done on Tuesday. It was said in the media that that was done, but what was actually done was 4 letters were sent by the parties themselves. They did not produce 61 signatures. 61 signatures were produced on Wednesday. And according to Knesset protocol, the next item on the agenda is that vote for speaker. What Speaker Edelstein decided to do, which is totally within his right, which was to close that session. And by doing so, the vote was not brought up on Wednesday. Rather, it will be brought up when the next Knesset session is convened, which is supposed to be tomorrow. Now, according to a separate law that was passed in 2015, the final date in which a Knesset speaker needs to be voted on is the formation of a new government. And as you know, we are very, very far away from that particular point. So what is the current thing that we're looking at within the Supreme Court? We have this situation where what Yuli Edelstein is saying is, even though I have 61 signatures, I understand I need to bring that up as the next motion on the agenda. I'm just not going to bring up anything to a vote. And when I do bring up something to a vote, it will be that. And I'm going to use my power as speaker to delay all voting. If you will, it is a reversed filibuster where the government makes a decision not to allow anything to reach for a vote until there is a formation of a new government. That's Yuli Edelstein's position. The Knesset legal advisor, which has taken the position of the opposition, says that if there are 61 MKs who've signed demanding a vote, the speaker must go ahead and allow that vote. And because what is written in law is that it is a final date in terms of the formation of the government, and it does not actually go ahead and say that there is any discretion given to the speaker of why he should, if in an event there are 61 MKs asking for a vote, delay it that long, that they should go ahead and allow that vote. So that's going to come up at 4 p.m. in less than an hour and a half, and we'll know what happens there. Of course, in a functioning democracy, Avi, you're allowed to bring things to the Supreme Court. That's, of course, very counter to the things that we're hearing coming from the opposition at the moment.
So is Bibi killing Israeli democracy right now? Because that's what 500,000 people on an online protest last night is going on. And they're putting up black flags across the country to basically protest that Israeli democracy is being killed.
So in a democracy, you're able to go ahead and hold a protest. You're able to have a demonstration. You're able to put black flags up. The opposition is allowed to go to the Supreme Court. You have a situation where the Knesset legal advisor is actually taking the opposition's position within that court case. These are all things that happen in a democracy, Avi. The Knesset is still open. All of the opposition MKs can go. They can show up, and they can do their jobs in the Knesset. Now, it's true they can't bring stuff to the Plenum right now, but that's because legally the Plenum does not actually meet on Sundays anyway. You know, they can start to complain come tomorrow. We do not know yet if Edelstein is going to go forward with a lot of the things he's saying or not. Again, it was within his power to end the session on Wednesday. And the situation we're in today, where the plenum does not meet until tomorrow, is like any other time. Now, the second issue that they say that is an issue in terms of a lack of democracy is that we don't have working committees. Now, the way that it says, the way that it works, and the way that it says within the Knesset protocol, unless a majority of MKs go ahead and vote for it, there's only supposed to be 3 committees running before there is an actual vote for the formation of a new government. That's the Appropriations Committee, the Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee, and what's known as the Arrangements Committee, which is a pre-House committee which deals with various issues such as deciding which MK gets which room and other rules within the Knesset itself. Now, these committees are still working, these 3 committees, from the last Knesset. Right now, they're working unofficially because of the situation that we've not yet voted new committees. In the past, there have been consensus. The previous committees, the last 22 Knessets, between opposition and coalition, and there was an agreement in terms of who would chair which committees, and everything moved forward. There is no agreement in this particular case. The last time that we had did not have a consensus agreement was in 2015, where the coalition and the opposition, minus Yisrael Beitenu, who decided to stay out of the coalition but was not caucusing with the opposition, they ended up, if you will, getting the short straw in terms of the positions that were given out on committees. So what happened was it had to go up to a vote because there was no consensus. Because there was a wide enough of a consensus, it was brought up to a vote within the Arrangements Committee itself and did not go to the plenum. Here it looks like we will have the vote tomorrow. This is not something that Edelstein is trying to prevent. It looks like we will have a vote tomorrow on the formation, at least, of the Arrangements Committee, and possibly also the Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee, as well as the Appropriations Committee. But again, these are all things which to say and to cry that there's no government oversight, that, when again, a lot of these measures that were passed by Netanyahu were brought to Gabi Ashkenazi, who is a member of the cockpit, a member of the 4 senior members of Blue and White. So again, the opposition went ahead and they were aware of these issues and also agreed to them, going back a week ago. To go ahead and say that democracy is not working is just an unfound issue. And it's one that really scares me, because if we were in a situation where there was no democracy, the citizens would already not be able to differentiate or know what the difference is. Meaning, if the Knesset was actually closed, at this point, you might have a situation of the boy that cried wolf. So democracy is fine. It's strong in Israel. There are disagreements. And really, the best way to get around these disagreements is through compromise and some consensus between the large parties of Likud and Blue and White. Unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing.
So if a vote takes place tomorrow to replace Yuli Edelstein as the head of the Knesset, what's the exact role in English? I forgot.
The speaker.
The speaker of the House. If he is replaced and Blue and White puts in a Blue and White representative, is that going to be bringing a potential government closer, or is that pushing away a potential government?
So you have to understand what people's strategies are here. Blue and White has a coalition of people that are against Netanyahu, 61 MKs. They don't have a government. They have a coalition of people that don't like Netanyahu. In order for them to remove Netanyahu from the political arena, their plan is to remove the speaker and pass legislation which would prevent the second mandate from going to Netanyahu. As you know, right now, Gantz has the first mandate. If Gantz is not able to, and in my opinion, it's not if, it's when, Gantz is not able to form a government because Lieberman and Ballot are not going to agree on the same government. And this issue then comes to fold that Gantz needs to return the mandate to the president. The president wants to give the mandate, then the second mandate, to Netanyahu. If in the first 2 elections, Netanyahu had the first mandate, in this case, Gantz got the first mandate, Netanyahu would be the candidate for the second mandate. He got 58 recommendations in the president's residence. So what Gantz wants to do is take the speakership, put in his own person, change the law to prevent Netanyahu from being able to get the second mandate. And by doing so, he believes that he will be able to force Likud or other members of the bloc into a coalition with him, at which point he will then drop the joint list and potentially also Lieberman, as well as his most loyal supporters in Labor and Meretz, in order to form a government that looks very different than what was promised to either side in terms of the 3 campaigns that we just had now. Now, on Netanyahu's side, he does not want to lose the ability to be able to get the second mandate. Therefore, as far as he's concerned, whatever can be done in order to eat away at as much time as possible from Gantz's first mandate and prevent the transfer of the speakership from the first to, from Edelstein to Mayor Cohen, who's the Blue and White representative from Yesh Atid, he will be able to buy as much time as possible. Now, the fact that the speakership is being used in such a way, that, in my opinion, is undemocratic. Now, a bigger issue is that once you do appoint a speaker, a permanent speaker, which is what they want to do here, you need 90 votes, which is 3/4, 75% of the Knesset to vote to remove that speaker and put in another speaker. meaning if blue and white decides by force to go ahead and take the speakership from Yuli Edelstein and from the right bloc, what will happen inevitably is, again, an attempt to pursue legislation by an unelected government with a speaker that would not be able to be thrown out. And they would change the rules of the game after the game has already been played. It's similar to changing the game of poker, not in the middle of the game of poker, but after the cards have been played and you start counting your chips.
Wow. That
Yeah.
I didn't know that impact of it. But so a lot is riding on whether they succeed in voting to remove Edelstein and replacing him with blue and white Mayor Cohen, it sounds like.
Yes, there is a lot riding on it. But again, my argument would be that if Gantz has a government, then that is the most democratic thing to move forward on. Meaning, if he has 61 MKs, instead of taking 61 MKs to remove the speaker in order to pass legislation to prevent Netanyahu from having the mandate, why doesn't he take those 61 MKs and have a confidence motion and form his own government? That would be the most democratic thing to do. Unfortunately, the decision to go ahead and to take the 61 MKs that are against Bibi, but are also against the idea of sitting in the same government and going ahead and acting as an opposition with a majority, with the ability to go ahead and get the speaker in order to change these rules of the game after the election, to me, that is what is not democratic. Unfortunately, like you said, a lot of people are not talking about this, mainly because a majority of people do not think that we will get this far. But it's my feeling, mostly because if you look in the past, the Supreme Court generally takes the position of Ayala Yunon, who's the Knesset legal advisor, who's been there for many years, is very much esteemed by people on both sides. Generally, the Supreme Court goes in and takes his position. I think that they will go ahead and say that the vote does need to happen on Monday. And since the session is supposed to be opened at 4 p.m. on Monday, I would expect that that would be the first order of business. Now, what happens after that, I've pretty much outlined exactly what will happen after that. The way to prevent that is to try to go ahead and form a national unity government before 4 p.m. tomorrow. What are the chances of that being able to happen? What leverage beyond that vote that Gantz has that he can try to throw at Netanyahu in order to make him compromise beyond the concessions which he made on national television yesterday? I'm not quite sure he's going to be able to do that, and unfortunately, that's going to put us in a very bad place where you can sort of understand where Yuli Edelstein today already is moving away from the legal arguments, and he's going through the argument which makes a lot of sense that if the vote does take place tomorrow, the chances of a national unity government or any government are really out the window, and this would send us to a fourth election, which of course would have to take place during this coronavirus crisis. So, there's a lot riding on this Supreme Court decision a little over an hour from now, but my expectation is they are gonna force a vote because, again, if we're looking at the legal aspect, I do understand that if you have 61 MKs that are demanding a vote, it's very difficult to go ahead and try to circumnavigate that, even if you have another law, because that other law does determine a finite time in which you can have that vote, but it doesn't give you ultimate discretion to go ahead and just have a speaker filibuster go on until that actually happens.
So it sounds like from what you're saying, either we have a national unity government by 4 p.m. tomorrow if a vote is supposed to take place, which it sounds from what you're saying, the Supreme Court will rule that that vote has to take place at 4 p.m. tomorrow. And if there is no unity government by 4 p.m. and that vote takes place, switching Yuli Edelstein with Blue and White's Mayor Cohen, we will a national unity government is almost no possibility, and we're heading to fourth elections. Even though Gantz has the 61 votes to make a government, but it's almost impossible for him to do so. Am I right on that
Yeah,
analysis?
I mean, I mentioned this a couple days after the election, where I saw where the wind was blowing, and I saw that this was exactly what it was that they were going ahead and suggesting. I predicted already then. I said it could probably be delayed, but they probably will pass this legislation, and that if they do go ahead and do so, that in this scenario, the fourth election would be about Netanyahu and the right wing bloc asking to be reelected on a mandate to change the law back. Now, going ahead and doing that actually makes the election about something. And especially with the maneuvering of Gantz with the Arab list, it makes it a very, very difficult situation for Gantz, which is why, again, I question, and, as you know, I've been on, with you many times questioning the political logic of Gantz, and we've seen time and time again, he has failed, even though he's had a lot of good cards. And again, right now he has a pretty good card. I think that if I'm Benny Gantz, it's worth it to take the deal that was put on the table by Netanyahu, maybe use the current situation of leverage just a little bit more. But to me, the minute you go ahead and have this vote at 4 p.m. tomorrow, you replace the speaker, it inevitably creates a fourth election. There's just no way around it. And if you do, the right now has an actual situation where they can cry that it's the left that has gone around and tried to steal democracy. And in terms of getting the vote out, you're talking about turnout. This would be an ideal situation. First of all, the fact that it was unjust to change the rules of the game and ignore what 58 seats worth requested, which was for Netanyahu to be prime minister. And second of all, and perhaps, you can also look at this as an additional election aspect, the fact that there was cooperation and coordination with the Joint Arab List, that's something which, of course, time and time again, Blue and White lied. They said throughout the campaign they would not do that. That takes us to the latest polls we've seen. The last poll that, which was just a few days, basically coup ready, that would gain a 4 seat, and Blue dropping to 30 seats. It also has the right bloc up from 58 to 62.
Oops. Jeremy, I lost you.
You lost me?
Yeah, I lost you after you said that the right block is up from 58 to 62. So continue from there.
So, as one could imagine, if Netanyahu is being pushed into a corner, which is what Gantz is trying to do, one has to understand, and this is always very difficult, you have to understand Gantz, Ashkenazi, Yalom, these are people of military minds. And I know from my service and spending time with a lot of people who ended up, becoming also alufim and major generals, the situation is that they have a certain way of thinking. Many times they don't understand the enemy's way of thinking. They don't think about the moves of the enemy. And in this analogy, when they're trying to think about what Netanyahu is up against, they think they have him in a corner. But if I'm Netanyahu, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I have a poll that has me going up to 40. I have the block going up to 62. This is something that I can tell you, not in public or private polls, was the right-wing bloc doing as well as they have in the last couple of polls that have come out over the last week. So if there's, believe me, Israeli people do not want to go to a fourth election. But if it's Gantz who goes ahead and changes the law, literally, to prevent Netanyahu from being able to form a mandate, the guilt, the blame for the fourth election will also be on Gantz, beyond the coordination with the Arab list and beyond the rally to flag effect that Netanyahu will be able to have with the fact that they changed the law against him.
What about the option that if Gantz succeed again, they switch Mayor Cohen to be the Speaker of the House. They change the law that Bibi cannot have the second mandate. He cannot be prime minister, right? What about the option, if that law is passed, for someone else in the Likud to be tapped to then be the Likud leader to make a right-wing government?
So again, that's been Gantz's strategy all along. He understands that the only way to remove Netanyahu is for Likud to remove Netanyahu. His hope is that if he changes the law and prevents Netanyahu from being prime minister, that the Likud will go ahead and have someone else come up, a challenger, someone else will emerge, and that person will either receive the second mandate from Rivlin, or when we are in what is called the 21 days between the second and the third mandate, where any one of the 120 MKs, it doesn't matter if they're number 34 on the list, it really doesn't matter. Any one of the 120 can be a prime minister candidate. Anyone who's able to receive 61 signatures, and that's what Gantz is going ahead and he's banking on that. And once again, this is someone who doesn't understand the culture within the Likud and within the right-wing bloc.
So basically, what you're saying, we already saw this after the second election, because the second election, then Gantz failed, and then they hoped someone else for that third round would put together the government, and it didn't happen. So you're basically saying even if they passed the law, majority of the cases are that we would end up with the same result as after the second elections. Not to think the result would be any different, even with Corona. You don't think that might play into it now?
I think that unfortunately Corona is being used as an excuse, and believe me, it's being used as an excuse by both sides. It's not that one side or the other is innocent from this, but you have to understand that if you, not you, but I'm saying if you are a blue and white supporter, or you're a member of their party, and you think that by changing the law, you're going to be able to get Netanyahu out, when Netanyahu was able to get 36 seats out of the 9 elections that he's been the head of the Likud, this was his best showing. This is after he was indicted. This was already when everyone knew that his already last week his trial was supposed to start, and because of Corona it didn't. But again, within all of these situations, you have a situation of a lot of right-wing people that have a lot of mistrust with the rule of law, with the agents of the rule of law, and with Gantz going ahead and changing the law to prevent Netanyahu from being able to form a government. There's no one in that environment within the Likud that's going to be able to emerge and say that he's going against Netanyahu when Netanyahu says he's going to fight it. And obviously he would, because, and this is an important thing to say. Once again, Netanyahu is willing to put up a date, an expiration date on his premiership. He was willing to do that also after the first and also after the second election. Each time Gantz has decided to say Netanyahu is a liar, he's not trustworthy, I don't believe him, and it has sent us to another election each time. Now, if you're asking me what the public wants, I think the majority of the public wants the two of them to get together and just figure it out already. And that brings us to another issue that's important. According to the law, only the person who has the mandate can actually form the government. Meaning we're having these national unity government talks that are pretty much a facade, because Gantz is the one who has the mandate. He's the one that needs to be prime minister in order to facilitate a situation in which Netanyahu is first, which is something which, as we would say, it would seem to be obvious that is the key and the way out of here. We need to have Gantz return the mandate to the president and have the president give the mandate to Netanyahu. But instead of that, we have, for the media's sake and for the public's sake, various press statements going out about talks on both sides. Supposedly there are secret tracks, regular tracks, but all of this is a facade because only Gantz can be prime minister as long as he has the mandate. And it's quite clear that Netanyahu is not going to go second in a rotation. That's a non-starter, as one would say,
Wait, so
in a
let's
negotiation.
take this back to what you were saying before. If you were saying earlier then that a national unity government the only chance for a national unity government is if it is decided upon by 4 p.m. tomorrow, but yet from what I understand from you right now, a national unity government for Netanyahu to be the first prime minister can only take place after Gantz's 28-day period of trying to put together a government is finished. So how do those things go together?
So the way that it works is that you have an agreement, you sign the agreement, you go ahead, you have a press conference, you give public statements, and then after everything is out in the open and everyone is quite aware of what's going to happen, Gantz formally gives the mandate back to Rivlin. Rivlin formally gives the mandate to Netanyahu, and on that same day, they go ahead and have the vote in which the coalition agreements have already been signed, and you just have the confidence vote and you're able to form the government. So again, you can say, given that there is a reason to have these negotiations and so on and so forth, but to me, let's put it this way, if you don't trust Netanyahu at all, then you would not trust him that once he would get the second mandate, that he wouldn't undercut you and then go ahead and try to form a government some other way. So again, it's either you have trust or you don't have trust. And what seems to be very clear is that there is no trust between the two sides. And if you look at the fact that they're speaking to each other through the media and not through the secret negotiation tracks, it's pretty clear also based on the media statements, which you wouldn't go ahead and do with, considering Corona and the fact that people want to see a resolution. You understand that we're in a very, very bad place. So what I expect to happen again is the vote at 4 of 5 Supreme Court justices that goes in the direction of blue and white. And then we should have actual, real accelerated negotiations into the night, into the morning. And we'll probably know tomorrow whether we're going to have a national unity government or we're going to have a fourth election.
So
those seem to be the most likely scenarios.
And just from your own insight or relationships, what do you make of the following information that's been put out there, that if it was up to Gantz himself, he would be jumping on board for a national unity government? It's really Lapid and Ya'alon from the blue and white cockpit who are the ones pulling back, really trying to bring down Bibi and stopping any national unity government. What truth do you think there is for that?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at things from Gantz's perspective for a minute here. He had a few opportunities to become prime minister, and he lost those opportunities because of Lapid. Let's remember that if Gantz would have accepted the president's outline, which was given to him after the second election, which had guarantors of Aryeh Deri, Naftali Bennett, pretty much the whole right-wing bloc, what would have happened is Gantz would have already been prime minister starting last week. The agreement was supposed to be that the handover of power was supposed to be at the date in which, the week before he was supposed to go ahead and start his trial. So Gantz is looking around, and he's in a situation where out of the 3 elections, he has the least amount of seats and votes compared to the previous 2. If he started off with the first election with 35, he's now looking at polls at dropping to 30. He could have been prime minister had he not listened to Lapid in the past. I think it's very likely that in the conversations that he's having with them, that he's saying, listen, guys, this could have been over already. me listening to you is the reason that we are still in the situation that we are that we are in now. And of course, the fact of the costly election and not having a government. Imagine how nice it would have been if we had a government that was functioning. I'll remind our viewers that we still have a caretaker government that's been going on since December of 2018.
Wow.
We're in March 2020. This is ridiculous. Gantz could have put an end to this a long time ago. There have been many deals put on the table by Netanyahu. All Gantz had to do is take one of them.
So it's interesting. I guess it's been wonderful talking to you, Jeremy. I think we'll wrap it up. We both have to go take care of our families and the challenge of working. But ending on a biblical note, something that I've been thinking lately. Again, don't know if this is correct or not, but in a biblical analogy, I've been thinking about is God hardening Pharaoh's heart when Moses was asking to let my people go, and Pharaoh kept on saying no, 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 and God hardening his heart. Basically, Pharaoh was going to let them go, but God hardened his heart. That's what I'm thinking is going on with blue and white. Each and every turn, they had an opportunity to make a government, and for whatever reason, whether it's Gantz, whether it's Lapid, Ya'alon, whatever, they keep on saying no, 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 and their situation keeps on getting worse, 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 pushing away the potential of Gantz or Lapid ever getting into a leadership position when they could have. What the outcome will be, I don't know, but that's a biblical analogy that's been going around my head.
No, I think that's very interesting. And it's very interesting because each time it's a different one of the four people in the cockpit that is taking a hardened position. So I find that a very, very interesting analogy. And of course, in the spirit of Nissan and coming up soon on Pesach, so it's quite amazing to think about that. I will use this opportunity just for any of our listeners and those who are viewing us. If any of you are not in Israel yet, it's becoming increasingly difficult to get back. I know there are some people that have some tickets for later this week or next week or whatever. My suggestion to you, as someone who is privy to information and stuff that might not be necessarily is public knowledge and whatever, I urge everybody who can to who of course wants to come home, and I think you should. There's the joke going around about Mashiach coming on the donkey, how people didn't understand it. Well, with no planes or boats or all the countries closing borders one by one can understand that's the only way for Mashiach to be able to come is on a donkey. So my plea would be for everyone who can to please just come home while you still have a chance. If we're talking about, biblical, analogies and whatever, we've had plenty of chances to look at the Tanakh, to look at our Bible and see when, there were Jews, Bnei Israel, who had a chance to come home and they chose not to, and it did not work out well for them. So my plea would be for those who can to go ahead and do so as soon as possible.
I join in that plea. And just to jump back to politics for a second, I think your boss, Naftali Bennett, as defense minister, is really doing a fabulous job. I think much of the Israeli public is recognizing that, and it would really be a shame in whatever political constellation happens for the next government for him not to remain in that position. But on that note, stay healthy. Stay with your family, and looking forward to the next update where hopefully we have better news of finally having a government to deal with our current situation and this coronavirus that I believe, again, most Israelis, even many leftists, agree that they much prefer Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to be at the helm than anyone else. That's what it looks to me. I don't know if you're getting the same feedback.
Again, I think the polls are showing that clearly. Likud at 40 seats. We haven't seen that since Ariel Sharon during his heyday.
Right. All right, Jeremy, thank you very, very much. Stay healthy.
Thanks. You too, Avi. Off.
Wait.